Okay, so I'm going to show you how to edit some of your photographs from the London trip. It's going to be a very simple tutorial, so just the basics of editing. We want you to edit between 15 and 20 of your photographs in a very kind of nice, simple way so that they're not too changed from the original image. You will be doing some more kind of different experiments with Photoshop, but for this 15 to 20, just some really nice, simple, straightforward edits that really enhance the original photograph. So I'm going to just show you on one of the photographs from here. Now you'll notice, just looking at the files here, that some of the endings of the file have CR2 there, or it might say NEF if you photographed on a Nikon camera. So CR2 means Canon camera, and it's the raw file in a Canon camera, and then NEF is a Nikon file. JPEG is what we're used to seeing and what you've used before. Now the thing with a CR2 or an NEF is it's a raw file, so if I just open one of these images now, you'll see that it opens in a window like this. Some of you may have seen this already when you've been editing some photographs before. Now what this isn't actually Photoshop, it's the raw conversion window. And until you actually click open image, you can't use this image in Photoshop. Now you might think this is a disadvantage, but it's not. If you take your photographs and record them on your camera in RAW mode, so in CR2 or NEF, depending on the type of camera you've got, then you will end up with an image that has a lot of information stored about the original photograph that you took. If you save your photos as JPEGs on your camera, that's absolutely fine, but it won't save as much information about the original. So it means things like areas like this that are fairly dark. If you accidentally sort of photograph something and it comes out a bit too dark, it'll be harder to bring information back, or if it's too light, it'll be hard to bring information back if it's taken in a JPEG rather than a RAW file. So don't see it as a bad thing, see it as an opportunity, and from now on when you're taking your photographs, we'll get you to make sure that you set your camera on raw mode so that it does come up like this. Okay, so what will happen is you'll have these kind of sliders on the right hand side which you can use to adjust the image. So first thing is we'll ignore these here for the moment and just look at the ones at the bottom here. So exposure, so darkening or lightening your image. Don't be too extreme about changing this, just some subtle changes can really kind of enhance the image. So if you notice, as I'm going to the right, it's lightening the whole image, okay, which can sometimes work. With this image, there's quite a lot of contrast between the lightest areas and the darkest. So just by lightening it to bring through some of the detail here, you're actually then losing information over here. So you might be better off for your exposure just altering the shadows or the highlights. So if we increase the shadow area, can you see you're bringing through a bit more information, a bit more detail in the shadows without losing that information in the highlights. So now with the highlights, if we go the other way, hopefully you can see that the white areas, you're getting a little bit more detail on the brickwork there. So that's giving you a kind of clearer picture of what was there originally. It might not look as good as the original kind of how it was shot if we go back to default, where this was darker and lighter and a bit more dramatic. So it's just sort of trying to play around with that and see what you think looks best, but don't get so carried away with it that you lose the kind of feel of the original image, if you like. The whites and blacks do a similar thing to those light and dark areas, except they really are concentrating on just white and black rather than the kind of different shades of that. Okay, so that's one thing there, and then you've got contrast. If you feel that your image comes out a little bit wishy-washy, like if it looked like this and you don't like that, then you can increase the contrast to give it a bit more kind of punch and power. Sometimes less contrast gives it a nice subtle soft effect, so have a look at that, play around with that. And then we've got clarity. Okay, so clarity is quite good if you've taken your photograph and it's very slightly out of focus. If you notice, if you push this up, it's starting to make things look a bit sharper, especially around these edges here. Again, don't overdo that because it can look a bit kind of false. Vibrance, we just increase the vibrance, it gives the whole image a kind of more strong colour. So the blues have gone a lot more kind of turquoise there, and saturation will do that even more across the whole image, a bit kind of too much sometimes. So again, just fiddle with that and see what you think. You can really desaturate the image, but still keeping it slightly coloured, which can sometimes have quite a nice effect, especially with something like this kind of subject matter. So we'll keep it somewhere like this. Okay, now don't worry about any of these things up here for the moment when you're in RAW mode, because you can do cropping probably more effectively in Photoshop. So now, once you're happy with that, so that's where you'd make most of your changes to things like the colour and the tone and exposure and contrast and so on. Then you click Open Image, and your photograph will slowly open in Photoshop. And you can see it's reading Camera Raw format here. Okay, so once you're into Photoshop, you can start accessing the other tools here. Now, if you shot your photograph in JPEG, you won't have had those raw sliders come up. So what you'll need to do to be able to change things like the tone and the contrast and the colours is to go Image, Adjust, and you'll see all the options that you've had on those raw sliders still come up here. So you've got brightness and contrast, exposure, hue and saturation, colour balance, and so on. And you've also got black and white, and if you want to, you can change the whole thing black and white, and you can see that's what's happened here. The colour things here are just what was originally blue. You can kind of alter the tones of black and white in those areas only. So you can kind of make some alterations here that change the type of black and white image you've got. So you might want to look at that. You can also use the Nik effects to do that as well, which there is a tutorial on that on my on the Sway. But for now, keep it fairly simple, and we want to maybe crop the image. So let's click on crop here. Now you've all used the crop tool because when you did the letters in the environment you would have used that, but just a kind of reminder here. So what we want you to do is to work on a basis of your images being 10 centimetres across and 15 high. That's the sort of normal shape and dimensions or kind of proportions of a photograph. If your photograph is the other way round, so landscape, then it would be 15 by 10 here. Okay, and then if we change this to size and resolution, we can put in the resolution of 300 pixels per inch as usual, which is what we usually try to get you to work at. So 10 by 15, and then that will keep your crop almost exactly the same shape as the photograph was originally, and then it's up to you to decide if you want to crop a certain part of it or to keep the whole thing and just take a little bit off the edges. So I'm going to keep it roughly as it was. Quite often, you know, if you've taken a lot of care over framing the photograph in the camera, you'll be quite happy with it. You could do an alternative crop and actually show both of those on your Sway to show that you've been kind of experimenting. Now the main problem with this, I think, is that the lines, the horizontal lines, are ever so slightly off. So what I want to do is to just grab the corners and line those up with the grid that comes up automatically to straighten them up. And I think that will actually improve the image quite a lot now. You can see it's gone smaller again, which always happens when you change the resolution. So just do fit on screen again, and that's improved it slightly. Maybe the bottom area is bigger than this bit here. We might want to make an alteration there to kind of even that up a bit, or not. And let's just see what that does. A little bit of a white corner there. So it's just fine-tuning that. Now you'll notice that when I'm trying to drag this accurately, that's quite difficult sometimes, so you have to be quite careful about how to avoid chopping too much off. So I'm using the arrows, the up and down arrows, to just align that there, and then the bottom end just reducing that down a bit there. Okay, so once you're happy with the crop and the adjustments that you've made, then save the image. It is slightly out, I think, there, not quite straight, so I would spend a little bit more time adjusting that, but for now I think we'll be quite happy with that. So I'm now going to go to File, Save As, and at this point, sorry, I need to crop it there. At this point, save as a JPEG so that you can put it onto Sway quite easily. So I'm just going to give this a new name, Photo 1, for example. And remember to save it into the folder that you've got on your Apple Cart with your London photos in. And we're going to save this as a sort of medium-sized JPEG, quality 4. So if quality 4 doesn't come up there, then just use the slider. So maybe you could try 5, see if that will work. If when you try to upload it to Sway it doesn't work, then reduce the quality a little bit more. And that's everything for the moment. So keep it simple. Edit 15 to 20 photographs. If you're absolutely desperate, because you've taken so many good photos, you could do a couple more. But try to really, really select your very best photographs for this task.